صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. We recite Ziyarat Ashura with the intention to pledge allegiance to Maulana Sayyid al-Shuhada and to pay tribute and condolences to the tragedy that fell upon him, to demonstrate our love towards him on our behalf and on behalf of our family members, on behalf of our friends, on behalf of our marhumin and marhumat, on behalf of the lovers of Ali Muhammad in the east and the west of the world, La Siyama, the Shuhada, who have given their blood and their lives to protect the teachings of Ali Muhammad, and on behalf of our virtuous and righteous ulama, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Assalamu alayka ya ibn Rasulillah. Assalamu alayka ya khiyaratallahi wa ibn khiyaratih. Assalamu alayka ya ibn Amiril Mu'mineen وابن سيد الوسيين. السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا ثار الله وابن ثاره والوتر الموتور. السلام عليك وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار. يا أبا عبد الله لقد عظمت الرزية وجلت وعظمت المصيبة بك علينا وعلى جميع أهل الإسلام، وجلت وعظمت مصيبتك في السماوات على جميع أهل السماوات. فلعن الله أمة أسست أساس الظلم والجور عليكم أهل البيت، ولعن الله أمة دفعتكم عن مقامكم وأزالتكم عن مراتبكم التي رتبكم الله فيها، ولعن الله أمة قتلتكم، ولعن الله الممهدين لهم بالتمكين من قتالكم. برئت إلى الله وإليكم منهم ومن أشياعهم وأتباعهم وأوليائهم. يا أبا عبد الله إني سلم لمن سالمكم وحرب لمن حاربكم إلى يوم القيامة. ولعن الله آل زياد وآل مروان، ولعن الله بني أمية قاطبة، ولعن الله ابن مرجانة، ولعن الله عمر بن سعد، ولعن الله الشمرا، ولعن الله أمة أسرجت وألجمت وتنقبت لقتالك. بأبي أنت وأمي لقد عظم مصابي بك، فأسأل الله الذي أكرم مقامك وأكرمني بك أن يرزقني طلب ثارك مع إمام منشور من أهل بيت محمد صلى الله عليه وآله. اللهم اجعلني عندك وجيحا بالحسين عليه السلام في الدنيا والآخرة. يا أبا عبد الله، إني أتقرب إلى الله وإلى رسوله وإلى أمير المؤمنين وإلى فاطمة وإلى الحسن وإليك بموالاتك وبالبراءة ممن قاتلك ونصب لك الحرب، وبالبراءة ممن أسس أساس الظلم والجور عليكم، وأبرأ إلى الله وإلى رسوله ممن أسس أساس ذلك وبنى عليه بنيانه وجرى في ظلمه وجوره عليكم وعلى أشيائكم. برئت إلى الله وإليكم منهم، وأتقرب إلى الله ثم إليكم بموالاتكم وموالاة وليكم وبالبراءة من أعدائكم والناصبين لكم الحرب، وبالبراءة من أشياعهم وأتباعهم. اللهم إني سلم لمن سالمكم وحرب لمن حاربكم وولي لمن والاكم وعدو لمن عاداكم. فأسأل الله الذي أكرمني بمعرفتكم ومعرفة أوليائكم ورزقني البراءة من أعدائكم أن يجعلني معكم في الدنيا والآخرة، وأن يثبت لي عندكم قدم صدق في الدنيا والآخرة. وأسأله أن يبلغني المقام المحمود لكم عند الله، وأن يرزقني طلب ثاري مع إمام هدى ظاهر ناطق بالحق منكم. وأسأل الله بحقكم وبالشأن الذي لكم عنده أن يعطيني بمصابي بكم أفضل ما يعطي مصابا بمصيبته، مصيبة ما أعظمها وأعظم رزيتها في الإسلام وفي جميع السماوات والأرض. اللهم اجعلني في مقام هذا ممن تناله منك صلوات ورحمة ومغفرة. اللهم اجعل محياي محيا محمد وآل محمد ومماتي ممات محمد وآل محمد. اللهم إن هذا يوم تبركت به بنو أمية وابن آكلة الأكباد اللعين ابن اللعين على لسانك ولسان نبيك صلى الله عليه وآله في كل موطن وموقف وقف فيه نبيك صلى الله عليه وآله. اللهم لعن أبا سفيان ومعاوية ويزيد بن معاوية عليهم منك اللعنة أبد العابدين. وهذا يوم وهذا يوم فرحت به آل زياد وآل مروان بقتلهم الحسين صلوات الله عليه. اللهم فضاعف عليهم اللعن منك والعذاب الأليم. اللهم إني أتقرب إلى الله اللهم إني أتقرب إليك في هذا اليوم وفي موقفي هذا وأيام حياتي بالبراءة منهم واللعنة عليهم وبالموالاة لنبيك وآل نبيك عليه وعليهم السلام 100 مرة. اللهم لعن أول ظالم ظلم حق محمد وآل محمد وآخر تابع له على ذلك. اللهم لعن العصابة التي جاهدت الحسين وشايعت وبايعت وتابعت على قتله. اللهم لعنهم جميعا 100 مرة. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. اللهم خص أنت أول ظالم باللعن مني وابدأ به أولا ثم لعن الثاني والثالث والرابع. اللهم لعن يزيد خامسا ولعن عبيد الله ابن زياد وابن مرجانة وعمر بن سعد والشمرة وآل أبي سفيان وآل زياد وآل مروان إلى يوم القيامة. سجدة. اللهم لك الحمد حمد الشاكرين لك على مصابهم. الحمد لله على عظيم رزيتي. اللهم ارزقني شفاعة الحسين يوم الورود وثبت لي قدم صدق عندك مع الحسين وأصحاب الحسين الذين بذلوا مهجهم دون الحسين عليه السلام. اللهم بحق أبا عبد الله الحسين اللهم عجل لولينا الفرج واجعلنا من أنصاره وأشيائه ومن المستشهدين بين يديه. اللهم ارزقنا زيارة مولانا أبا عبد الله الحسين في الدنيا وشفاعته في الآخرة. اللهم وفقنا لخدمته ووفقنا لإقامة الشعائر وإظهار الحزن عليه ما دمنا حيا. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم.
I request you all to recite Surah Fatiha for all our marhumin, especially for those marhumin who do not have anyone to recite Surah Fatiha for Al-Fatiha.
Muhammad sallallahu
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه.
جب مجھے آپ کے قاتل نے ہے مارا بابا، جب مجھے آپ کے قاتل نے ہے مارا بابا، ہر تماچے پہ سکینہ نے، ہر تماچے پہ سکینہ نے پکارا بابا، جب مجھے آپ کے قاتل نے ہے مارا بابا، مجھے بالوں سے پکڑ کر گئے تماچے مارے، مجھے بالوں سے پکڑ کر گئے تماچے مارے، میں نے سرشار سے مانگا جو، میں نے سرشار سے مانگا جو تمہارا بابا، جب مجھے آپ کے قاتل نے ہے مارا بابا، وہ جو دریا پہ نے تحفے میں مجھے بخشے تھے، وہ جو دریا اپنے تحفے میں مجھے بخشے تھے، ان کو بے دردی سے ظالم نے، ان کو بے دردی سے ظالم نے اتارا بابا، جب مجھے آپ کے قاتل نے ہے مارا بابا، آپ کے سینے میں آرام سے سونے والی، آپ کے سینے میں آرام سے سونے والی سو کے اب خاک پہ کرتی ہے سو کے اب خاک پہ کرتی ہے گزارا بابا جب مجھے آپ کے قاتل نے ہے مارا بابا ہر تماچے پہ سکینہ نے ہر تماچے پہ سکینہ نے پکارا بابا جب مجھے آپ کے قاتل نے مجھے بالوں سے پکڑ کر گئے تماچے مارے مجھے بالوں سے پکڑ کر گئے تماچے مارے میں نے سرشار سے مانگا جو میں نے سرشار سے مانگا جو تمہارا بابا جب مجھے آپ کے قاتل نے محمد وعلی محمد صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد نعرہ حیدری اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد
غریب زہرا کی غریب زہرا کی غربت سنو اہل عزا اکیلا رہ گیا مقتل میں جب میرا مولا سپاہ شام نے چاروں طرف سے گھیر لیا لب فرات تھا ہر ایک خون کا پیاسا تھا گل چراغ امامت ابھی بجھانا ہے اور زمین پہ زین سے شبیر کو گرانا ہے یہ سن کے سنگ کسی نے جبین پر مارا کسی نے پہلو میں برچھی کا پھل اتار دیا اور کسی نے سامنے آ کر چلائے تیغ جفا غریب زہرا کا زیں پر سنبھلنا مشکل تھا، علی و زہرا کو رن میں رلایا جاتا تھا، ارے حسین گرتے نہیں تھے، گرایا جاتا تھا، لگا جو تیر تو اصغر کو شہ نے یاد کیا، پکارا غازی کو جس وقت سر پہ گرز لگا، اور لگی جو برچی تو اکبر کو دی طرف کے صدا، تماچا خولی نے مارا تو بولے یا زہرا، علی کو یاد کیا سر پہ ضرب چلتے ہوئے، اور حسن کو یاد کیا منہ سے خون گرتے ہوئے، ہائے حسین، رقم کیا ہے یہ راوی نے درد کا منظر، کہ چلنے والا تھا جس دم حسین پر خنجر، اور بہن سے آگے کھڑی تھی حسین کی دختر، کہاں یہ شمر سے اس دم غریب نے رو کر میری سکینہ اور میری سکینہ کہیں دم نہ توڑ دے ظالم، تو رحم کر میرے بالوں کو چھوڑ دے ظالم، اب اس کے آگے تکلم بیان کیا ہوگا، لگی جو ضربیں نہ نکلا لہو کا ایک قطرہ، لعین غیظ میں آ کر صدائیں دینے لگا، ارے حسین جلدی بتا معجزہ ہے یہ کیسا، کہاں غریب نے تو پیار ماں کا کیا جانے، گلے پہ میرے گلا رکھ دیا ہے زاهرانه والمحمد وآل محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل.
May I request you all to recite 5 times Amma Yujibu for all those who are sick and in need of our du'as. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Amma Yujibu Amma
أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. اللهم إنا نسألك بحق مولانا إمام حسن المجتبى اللهم اشفي مرضانا وارحم موتانا واقض حوائجنا بحق إمام المجتبى يا الله. Before we begin tonight's majlis, let me recite Surah Al-Fatiha for Marhuma Hamida Pyarali Panju and Surah Al-Fatiha for all of our marhumin and marhumat. And on a night like this, may Allah Azza wa Jal, through the barakat of Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba, grant all of our marhumin the highest level of Jannah. May grant them forgiveness of their sins. May grant them proximity with Ali Muhammad. All of this with the barakat of Allah, salawat ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. الحمد لله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله بارئ الخلائق الأجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء حبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل.
ثم الصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين، لا سيما ولي الله الحجة ابن الحسن صاحب الأمر والزمان.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
روحي وأرواح العالمين له الفداء، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم وعلى منكري فضائلهم وعلى من شرك في ولايتهم من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين. آمين رب العالمين. صلى الله عليك يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله. صلى الله عليك يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله. يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويباب نجاة الأمة يا غريب الغرباء يا مظلوم كربلاء السلام على من جعل الله الشفاء في تربته السلام على من الإجابة تحت قبته السلام على ساكن كربلاء فيا ليتنا ثم يا ليتنا وكنا معكم سادتي يا سادتي فنفوز فوزا عظيما أما بعد قال الله تعالى في محكم كتابه الحكيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أطيعوا الله وأطيعوا الرسول وأولي الأمر منكم صدق الله العلي العظيم وآمنا به نوروا مجالسكم بذكر محمد وآل محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
أحبائي, you find that the madhlumiyat of Maulana Imam Abu Muhammad Hasan ibn Ali al-Mujtaba salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi the madhlumiyah of our Mawla extends beyond the manner in which he was martyred and beyond the manner in which his blessed corpse was desecrated. And you find that Aslan, the history of Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba, Imam al-Mujtaba was not only madhloom in the time that in the manner in which he was dealt with upon assuming the responsibilities of Khilafah and the Imamah, but you find that Imam Hasan alayhi salam was madhloom even during the time of his father Amir al-Mu'mineen. And the madhlumiyat of Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba is something in which very little attention is paid to, in that he was madhloom during the time of his father, before his father Amir al-Mu'mineen Ruhi Lahul Fida undertook the responsibility of the Khilafah Zahiriyah. At that time, Imam al-Mujtaba was madhloom, and even before that. And you find that the life of Imam al-Mujtaba is about suppression and oppression in its entirety. For this is that Imam al-Mujtaba, to shed light on a little bit of this and to move on in our bahath for tonight, the madhlumiyat, a person may come and ask, how is Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba madhloom during the time of his father, before his father Amir al-Mu'mineen took the Zahiri role of Khilafah? This is that Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba, who witnessed the Ummah assault his mother on the day of Saqif. Wahai Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba alayhi salam. It is his mother who would hold his hand and the hand of Imam al-Hussein, and she would walk with them with the pain of a broken rib from the house to Jannatul Baqi, and in Bayt al-Huzn they would watch her mother weep for Rasulullah and the stolen rights of Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salam. And upon his father Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salam taking the role of the Zahiri Khilafah, you find Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba was oppressed in the manner in which he saw and had to remain silent for the manner in which his father was treated. In fact, Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba was the recipient of a lot of verbal abuse during the time of Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salam. As you know, by way of one example, as you know, in the presence of a Ma'sum Imam, who is undertaking the responsibility of Imamat in terms of executing the role of Imamat, the next Imam in line most of the times will remain silent out of respect for the Imam Zaman of that time. Hence, you will find that during the time of Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salam, Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba's khutbahs or speeches or kalam is very little, very few, in the respect of Amir al-Mu'minin. Similarly, when Imam Hasan alayhi salam took the role of Imamah, you find that the hadith of Imam al-Hussein are very few and very far apart. And similarly, during the time of Imam al-Hussein, Imam Sajjad's words are very few. During the time of Imam Sajjad, Imam al-Baqir's words are very few, and so on and so forth. And for this reason, you would find that people would come and they would abuse Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba. And they started rumors about him in Kufa that he had defect in speech, he had defect in memory, and that he was not able to live up to the balagha of his father. And you find that Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba, in the face of all this verbal abuse, not only remained silent and had sabr, but exercised the highest level of akhlaq and provided guidance to these juhala. And similarly, you find during the time of Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba, when the role of Zahiri Khilafah was given to him, Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba madhloom. The manners or the events that governed the period of the time where he undertook the Zahiri role of Khilafah, he was oppressed. The manner in which history recorded these events, history oppressed Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba. And generations later, when people came to analyze and interpret history, even those who interpreted history did a dhulm on Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba, because they falsely interpreted the history of Imam al-Hasan. And then you look at the character assassination that was thrown out towards Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba, khasatan by the ulama of the mukhalifin from the Amma, where they would accuse Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba as being, wal-ayadhu billah, a person who had married and divorced up to 300 times in his life, where they would say that he had no respect for the institution of marriage, but fulfilled, wal-ayadhu billah, his lust and his desires with over 300 women. You look at these within the books of history that have been narrated. For Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba's madhlumiyat sarahatan is something that we need to study, we need to analyze, we need to shed light on. Even on the assumption that, on the words of the Amma and on the words of the Mukhalifi, that whatever happened after the Sulh, that Khilafah was given to Muawiyah, on that premise at least, till today, why don't the Amma involve Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba within this title of Khulafa al-Rashidin? Why? the acknowledgement of the three leaders of the Madrasa of Saqifa. They acknowledged the Khilafah of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Tayyib, what happened to the Khilafah of Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba? When within the books of the Amma it is narrated that there was unanimous agreement within the Muhajirin and the Ansar and the Tabi'in and the people of the time that Bay'ah is to be given to Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba, regardless of their intentions. There were those who pledged Bay'ah for ideological reasons. There are those who pledged Bay'ah for political reasons. There are those who pledged Bay'ah for economic reasons. But begad the nadar, without having a look at the intention of the Bay'ah, the physical act of Bay'ah that was given to Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba upon the martyrdom of Amir al-Mu'mineen. The Ummah was unanimous in this. For why is it that the books of the Mukhalifeen and this iddia, this call that the people of the Sunnah wal Jama'ah, where is Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba within this equation of this Khulafa? Omitted in history altogether. Ala kullin, you come and you have a look within the oppression that Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba Ruhi Lahul Fida was subject to, and the oppression through the books of history. You find that one of the greatest injustices that was done to Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba is that historians came forward and said that they summarized the historical events where Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba raised an army to go into war with Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. And as the two armies met, Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba conceded to making a peace treaty with Muawiyah due to his political weakness in ruling over the Muslim Ummah. And as a result of this, Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba gave up his right of Khilafah or Imamah. And then from here they quote the Sulh of Imam al-Hasan with Muawiyah. Our point of ta'ammul and our point of tahleel for tonight, analysis for tonight, is to negate this premise that is put forward within the books of history, that number one, Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba was too weak or not courageous enough, or was not courageous enough to face Muawiyah, number one. Number two, that he abdicated his right of Khilafah and Imamah to Muawiyah. And in fact, what we will do is analyze the conditions within the Sulh of Imam al-Hasan to understand actually that this was the biggest political and ideological gain for the Islamic Ummah and for the Shias in particular. All of this with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. You find that number one, by way of definition, what is understood as the Sulh Imam Hasan, and this is generally translated as the peace treaty of Imam Hasan with Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. In essence, if you were to look at it, Ahsan, if you were to look at the context in which this Sulh was made, and you were to look at the description of the Sulh from the historians, the likes of Sheikh al-Mufid rahmatullah alayh, you begin to understand Sheikh Mufid describes the Sulh between Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba and Muawiyah as being a hudna. Hudna, yani a ceasefire. And there is a very big difference between a ceasefire and between a peace treaty. A ceasefire is when two armed factions capable of going into war make a conscious decision to temporarily put down the arms in order for peace to prevail over certain conditions. This is a big difference from the meaning of a peace treaty, where a person may submit into a peace treaty because there is no other option out. Many times we are made to believe through the books of history that Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba was forced into a peace treaty. Abadan, Ma'asum Imam, in his infallibility, in his sharpness, in his analysis, in his execution of the role of Imamat, is never forced into anything. If the Imam did the Sulh, he did the Sulh out of will, as per the command of Allah, and in order to ensure that the maslihah of the deen comes forward. Some people come forward and say, "No, Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba was forced into a Sulh because the people around him deserted and there were too few." Being too few is not a criteria to not go into war, because we see this with Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. 72 of them there were, but they went into war. For that premise cannot be used. There was something much greater within the readings and the execution of the role of Imamat undertaken by Imam al-Mujtaba. Tayyib. So if we understand, number one, by definition, that sulh actually means hudna, yani a ceasefire between two factions that are capable to go into war. Meaning what? Imam al-Hasan, together with the Bani Hashim themselves, were capable enough to go into war with Muawiyah. This is one. Number two, and from here we begin our bahath in terms of understanding the peace treaty or the ceasefire that Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba engaged in with Muawiyah. What were the conditions within this ceasefire? What were the conditions that stipulated the ceasefire? And if you understand the conditions within the ceasefire, you will begin to understand who was politically, militarily, and ideologically victorious from this sulh. You find that if you were to refer back to the books of history, one of the challenges, and this is part of the oppression that has been done on Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba ruhillahu al-fida, you will find that the conditions of the ceasefire, known as Sulh al-Hasan, the conditions of the ceasefire, you will not find all conditions of the ceasefire captured by a single historian in a single book. Rather, you will find that the conditions that stipulate the ceasefire are scattered within a number of historical books. And if you were to rely on, for example, if you were to rely on Biharul Anwar of Alam al-Majlisi, and then you were to rely on the writings of Al-Khawarizmi, and then you were to rely on Tarikh al-Tabari from the Mukhalifin, and you were to rely on the Tarikh of Sibit ibn Jawzi, who is also from the Mukhalifin. If you were to rely on these four historical texts, between them, you will be able to formulate, or you will be able to discover 12 conditions that stipulated the ceasefire between Imam Hasan and Muawiyah. And these 12 conditions in itself are enough to show you who was victorious and why the Imam engaged and what was the objective of engaging within this ceasefire. You find that one of the first things Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba did through the ceasefire is that he separated divine rulership from political worldly leadership. He separated these two offices, if you can call them. And prior to this, you find that from the time Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam took the Zahiri worldly leadership of the Ummah from the city of Medina and then moved the capital of the Islamic land to Kufa, what Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam did is that he combined the office of divine imamate with political leadership and governance over the Islamic Ummah. The two offices came together. When were they separated? During the time of Saqifa. Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salam, as per the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, refrained from exercising his right to political leadership, and he separated this. Let the madrasa of the Khulafa of Saqifa take this. And the divine imamate was always with him. However, you find that the madrasa of Saqifa, what they did is that they claimed that the Khilafa, yani successorship of Rasulullah, is tied with the concept of leadership, which is political and over the dunya. And this was the mafhum, this was the understanding of the awam, that if a person is the successor of Rasulullah, then this person must exercise political leadership by being in power. This was the mafhum, this was the understanding of Khilafah in the minds of the people. You find that Imam al-Mujtaba through the Sulh was able to show that these two leaderships are capable and are able to be separated when a person has to choose between divine leadership and divine principles. If it means giving up political leadership and leadership of the dunya, then so be it. And you find that this was in the footsteps of Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salam. Some people are of the opinion that no, political leadership, you hold on to it, even if it means giving up religious principles. Ahlul Bayt are of the opposite. They say religious principles first. If keeping government or entering into government or assuming power and maintaining rule comes at the expense of the deen, for then government can go to ila jahannam wa bi'sal masir, which is what Amir al-Mu'minin Ruhi Lahul Fida says in Nahjul Balagha when he was asked about the dunya and leadership. He says this political power that you chase, to me is less, the worth of it is less than the sneeze of a goat. There's Ibara inside of this. For you find that within the Sulh, Imam al-Mujtaba Ruhi Lahul Fida separated divine rulership, what we call as imamat, from this political material leadership of the world. And this is found through the first condition stipulated within the Sulh. And even so, from this you are able to understand that Imam al-Mujtaba didn't give up his right for imamat. Imam al-Mujtaba gave up the right for material dunyawi political leadership. Go, take it. You are chasing the dunya, take the dunya. But even when Imam al-Mujtaba gave Muawiyah the dunya, he stipulated upon Muawiyah conditions, whereby if Muawiyah was not able to fulfill these conditions, he would be exposed for the rest of history. Shufu, the first condition that was stipulated within the Sulh, Taslimul Amr ilal Muawiyah. Yani Imam al-Hasan will give the affairs to Muawiyah. And the affairs over here is what? Dunyawi rulership. Rulership over the material world. Political leadership and governance. But on condition. Condition of what? Ala ayya'amal bi kitabillah. Muawiyah will rule as per the teachings of the Quran. Number one. Number two, wa sunnata nabiyyih. Political leadership will be based upon the sunnah of Rasulullah. And number three, wasiratil khulafa is-salihin. He will lead or he will rule as per the seerah of the khulafa is-salihin. Now some people come forward, and you see the madlumiyat of Imam al-Mujtaba in this. Some people come forward and they say, this condition over here shows that Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba actually endorsed the Khulafa of Saqifa, because he says over here that they should be in the seerah of the Khulafa as-Salihin. Why Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba? It wasn't sufficient for him to say Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah, seerah of Rasulullah. Why did Imam al-Mujtaba put Khulafa al-Salihin? We said to them, Baba, Imam al-Mujtaba, who is the Quran Natiq, speaks the language of the Quran Summit. If the goal was that Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba meant over here that Muawiyah is to rule as per the seerah of the Khulafa al-Salihin, and by Khulafa meaning the Khulafa of Saqifa, then there would have been no reason for Imam al-Mujtaba to add a qaid. Qaid means a restriction. He said on the seerah of the Khulafa as-Salihin. He didn't say on the seerah of any one of the Khulafa. Khulafa, there were 4 before him, according to the school of the Amma. But Imam al-Mujtaba said, I don't want you to follow the seerah of any of the Khulafa, just those who are from the Salihin. Meaning from the 4, there are some of them who are the Salihin. Not all of them are the Salihin. So because Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba is Quran Natiq, and when the Imam uses the words like the Khulafa al-Salihin, I need to go back to the Quran and I need to ask myself, who are these people who are the Salihin? And from the Khulafa of the past, how many of them qualify to be from the Salihin? So what I do is I come back to the Quran, because Imam al-Mujtaba is Quran Natiq. So when the Quran Natiq tells me the seerah of the Khulafa as-Salihin, I go back to the Quran Summit and I find out who are the Salihin. Number 1, if I want to get a brief understanding of who are the Salihin, I go to Surah Al-An'am. Within Surah Al-An'am, you find verse number 85. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wa Zakariya, wa Yahya, wa Isa, wa Ilyas, kullum min as-Salihin. Zakariya and Yahya and Isa and Ilyas, all of them are from the Salihin. So now I understand who is Zakariya, Yahya, Isa, and Ilyas. These are Anbiya. No 2 Muslims will dispute on this. They are prophets, Anbiya. So now I understand. Allah is saying in the Quran that Zakariya, Yahya, Isa, and Ilyas are all from the Salihin. Yani I understand that the Salihin is a group of people that the Anbiya belong to that clique. So there is a clique of people known as the Anbiya. And this Anbiya also belong to a higher group of people known as the Salihin. Understood? So now we know that one of the things about the criteria of the Salihin is who? The Salihin are those people who are the quality and the caliber of the Anbiya. The likes of Yahya, Isa, Zakariya, and Ilyas. So the first understanding is that the first deduction that you remove is that the Salihin, like the Anbiya belong to the Salihin. Anbiya are selected by who? Anbiya are selected by the people or by Allah? Anbiya selected by Allah, and they belong to a group of people who are the Salihin, also selected by Allah. Now I come and I ask these Khulafa from the madrasa of Saqifa, what the choice of Allah or the choice of the people? They come from the choice of Allah Azza wa Jal. But you come and then you find in Suratul Nisa, verse number 65. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Verse number 69 in Surah An-Nisa. وَمَنْ يُطِعِ اللَّهَ وَالرَّسُولَ. Those who obey Allah and the Rasul. What is the jaza? What is the reward for those who obey Allah and obey the Rasul? See what the Quran says. فأولئك مع الذين أنعم الله عليهم من النبيين والصديقين والشهداء والصالحين وحسن أولئك رفيقا. Allah Azza wa Jal gives glad tidings to the people. He says, Ya Bani Adam, if you obey Allah and you obey Rasul Allah, then the reward is that in the Akhirah, you will be brought into the company of the Nabiyyin. You will be placed in the company of the Nabiyyin. And with the Nabiyyin, you'll be placed in the company of the Siddiqeen. Together with the Siddiqeen, there are those who are the Shuhada. And together with the Shuhada, they are the Salihin. So you understand over here that the Salihin, together with the Anbiya and the Shuhada and the Siddiqeen, are a caliber of people much higher than the rest of the Ummah. And you can only be in their company if you obey Allah and you obey Rasul. Look at what the verse says. وَمَنْ يُطِعِ اللَّهَ وَالرَّسُولَ, the one who obeys Allah and Rasul. يَوْمُ الْغَدِيرِ, when Rasulullah said, مَنْ كُنْتُمْ مَوْلَى فَهَذَا عَلِيٌّ مَوْلَى, did the people obey Rasul or no? If they obeyed the Rasul in the command of Ghadir, their reward is that they will be reunited with the Salihin. And when you return back to the tafasir of the Amma before the Khassa, Salihin is none other than Maulana Amir al-Mu'minin Ali ibn Abi Talib. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajjal faraja. Yani, the person who has akal, the person who has basira in their deen will be able to see that Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba, the first condition of the ceasefire was that you will rule this dunya politically, materialistically, as per the kitab, the Quran, the seerah of Rasulullah and the seerah of my father Amir al-Mu'mineen. So, when you have two people who are at war, and Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba, in the condition of the ceasefire, writes to Muawiyah that you will follow the seerah of my father, could he have done this if he was in a power of weakness or strength? He was in a position of strength to begin with. Why? Number two, Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba exposed Muawiyah and made history know until Yawmul Qiyamah that Muawiyah in no way was suitable for any sort of religious leadership to begin with. Because the argument that we put forward was that people say, or the books of history narrate, that Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba gave up his Islamic rule to write his imamat, his khilafat to Muawiyah. We say, la. In fact, what Imam Hasan did is that he exposed Muawiyah, and through the sulh, look at what Imam al-Mujtaba imposes upon Muawiyah. He says to him, the fourth condition within the sulh, Allah yusammihi Amir al-Mu'mineen. One of the conditions of the ceasefire is that Muawiyah will not name himself Amir al-Mu'mineen. There are two meanings over here. Number one, the title Amir al-Mu'mineen, by the way, is restricted for one person and one person only, Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib. Ruhi lahul fida. None of the other 11 Imams even claimed for themselves the title Amir al-Mu'mineen. A person once came to Imam Sadiq alayhi salam and referred to him as Amir al-Mu'mineen. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam began to tremble. Hadith says he began to tremble, shiver. He says, how dare you call me this title? Do you know what this title is reserved for? Hi, Ba'adam, today you see in politics here, there, Taliban, Mataliban, anyone who comes in, they call them Amir al-Mu'mineen and this and that. From the Khulafa of Bani Abbas and Bani Umayyah. Whoever wanted the title took it and usurped it. For number one, Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba refusing Muawiyah to use the title Amir al-Mu'mineen was from the aspect that this title is reserved for my father Amir al-Mu'mineen. This is number one. But the second thing that you are able to extract from this is that Amir al-Mu'mineen means what? The leader of the believers. When Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba imposes upon Muawiyah that you cannot use the title of the leader of the believers, meaning that Imam al-Mujtaba has removed all religious credibility from Muawiyah. Your rule is nothing but secular. Did Imam al-Mujtaba give up his Islamic rule to write law? In fact, Imam al-Mujtaba went a step forward. He imposes upon Muawiyah. He says to him, وَأَلَّا يُقِيمْ عِنْدَهُ لِلشَّهَادَةِ. Muawiyah is taking the rule or the role of political leadership, but in the conditions of the ceasefire, Muawiyah accepts that he is not suitable for any sort of testimony to be given to him. He is not suitable to give testimony. Ya Habibi, he is not suitable to give any sort of testimony. Do you know what that means? If people want to get divorced and you need a witness, he doesn't qualify as a witness. If the moon is sighted and you need 2 witnesses, he doesn't qualify as a witness. He has no religious credentials to begin with. Imam al-Mujtaba exposed him for history to come that these were people who usurped political leadership for the sake of the dunya and have no religious legitimacy. More than that, Imam al-Mujtaba, Allahu Akbar. Now, put this in the context of this day and age. Contextualization of historical documents is an important manner to understand, or is an important aspect through which you understand the role of Imam. Look at the condition that Imam al-Mujtaba ruhillahu al-fida imposes upon Muawiyah. أن يفرق في أولاد من قتل مع أبيه في يوم الجمل وسفين 1000 درهم. Imam al-Mujtaba stipulates upon Muawiyah through this ceasefire that Muawiyah will pay 1000 dirham. 1000 meaning 1,000 by 1,000, yani million. Imam al-Mujtaba stipulates upon Muawiyah as conditions of the ceasefire that Muawiyah will pay 1 million dirhams or dinars? Dirhams. Muawiyah will pay 1 million dirhams to the victims of the wars of Jamal and Siffin. Do you know what Imam al-Mujtaba achieved through this sulh, ceasefire? Imam al-Mujtaba, Jamal, the first civil war to take place in Islamic history. Over 10,000 people were killed in the Battle of Jamal. Till today, the books of history mention the Battle of Jamal as fitna that happened between 2 virtuous camps of believers. And then it is covered and dusted under the books of history. And if you ask till today, inside of the school of the Mukhalifin, Baba, when it came to the Battle of Jamal, on one side you have somebody that claimed to be Amirul Mu'mineen, and on one side you had a woman who claimed to be Ummul Mu'mineen, and they clashed into war and lives were lost. Was there anybody on Haqq or anybody on Batil? There is no answer. Till then, there was no one until today in history. From the books of the Mukhalifin, you find that there is so much confusion that has been put there, that there is no element of Haqq and Batil. what Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba achieved through the Sulh and in this condition for the Battle of Jamal and the Battle of Siffin. Imam al-Mujtaba imposed upon Muawiyah that one of the conditions of this ceasefire is that you will pay 1,000,000 dirhams in compensation to the victims of the Battle of Jamal and Siffin from the army of my father Amir al-Mu'mineen. Do you know what this means in the world of politics? This is an admission of guilt, because it is only the person who is guilty of war crime and bloodshed who accepts to pay compensation to the families of the victim. Have you seen in politics in the history of mankind, or in military warfare or the invasion of any country, where somebody who is innocent pays compensation for blood money for the victims of war? Look through the entire human history. If countries and nations or parties have been brought to justice, they've been brought to justice by being forced to pay compensation for the wars that they are guilty of initiating and causing bloodshed and loss of life. By Imam al-Mujtaba imposing upon Muawiyah, Imam al-Mujtaba, through the ceasefire, got an eternal document for history to realize and understand that Muawiyah accepted guilt, admission of guilt for the role that he played, together with the woman on the camel, in the Battle of Jamal and later in the Battle of Siffin. And as a result of this guilt, he paid this blood money and compensation to the aitam, to the widows and the yatims who fought in the army of Amir al-Mu'mineen. You know, Muawiyah, when he rallied Aisha in the Battle of Jamal and rallied the forces of Sham and Siffin, on what did he do? On the hatred of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba made him give up the Baytul Mal for compensation for the widows and the orphans of those people out of whose hatred you killed. There is no other avenue through which this sort of admission could have been captured other than through a Imam who is divinely appointed by Allah Azza wa Jalla. But look at what Imam al-Mujtaba, and this is the last aspect of within the shurut. Condition number 11. أَيُّعْتِيهِ مَا فِي بَيْتِ مَالِ الْكُوفَةِ. Imam al-Mujtaba stipulated upon Muawiyah as a condition of the ceasefire that Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba would have full autonomy over the Baytul Mal in Kufa. Do you know what this means? This actually means that Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba carved out through the Baytul Mal, because the Baytul Mal is what? The public treasury. Think of the Baytul Mal as the central bank. And there were 4 or 5 central banks within the Islamic Empire, through which all the taxes from the Islamic lands and different Islamic regions are being collected and then distributed from here. One of these central banks was in Kufa. Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba stipulated over Muawiyah that the gains or the entire wealth of the Baytul Mal submitted to the Baytul Mal in Kufa, Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba has full autonomy over how to use it. He has full control over that Baytul Mal in Kufa. Through this, what Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba actually did, in reality, he carved out a region of autonomy by taking full control of the central bank of Kufa. And he created a region of autonomy, which would then become a safe zone for him and his Shia, and anyone who wanted to leave from the control of Muawiyah. So you think about the Islamic lands that spread about 50 or 60 present-day countries, which is at the verge of a civil war. And in order for Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba to achieve what he achieved, a ceasefire is drawn, and from this ceasefire, an autonomous region is carved out, which is then managed with the Baytul Mal from the city of Kufa. And victims of war from the previous regime or the previous war of Siffin and Jamal, who live within this autonomous region, their compensation through a monthly stipend is guaranteed by the warring faction. Politically, you will not see in the history of mankind any sort of ceasefire in which the warring faction has been squeezed to an admission of guilt and the party of Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba to achieve what they achieved. You will not find. Political science is so important to study in order to understand the gains that Imam al-Mujtaba did. No school in human history has been able to achieve this. And in addition to all this, Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba was able to expose the Munafiqeen who were under the flag of Ahlul Bayt. He achieved all this with the Munafiqeen. Because when Imam al-Mujtaba went out in war against Muawiyah, which then led to the Sulh, Imam al-Mujtaba's army constituted of 40 to 50,000 men. 40 to 50,000 men. Within these 40 to 50,000 men, there were Mukhalifin, yani the Amma, who saw Imam Hassan's leadership as political leadership and not God leadership. He had his Shia, that were the minority of the minority. There were the Khawarij. The Khawarij who only joined hands with Imam Hassan because the enemy of my enemy is my friend. They had animosity with Muawiyah from the days of Siffin. So they were only with Imam al-Hassan for the maslihah. You have the Mukhalifin, you have the Khawarij, and you have the Shia that's a minority of the minority. And then you have the weakest people in society. The weakest people in society, Minu, those who have no backbone. They're with the wind. Today the wind takes them this way, they're with Imam al-Mujtaba. Tomorrow the wind takes them with Muawiyah, they go with Muawiyah. And they formed a chunk of the army. Imam al-Mujtaba, by engaging inside of a ceasefire, outside of all the political gains that he was able to achieve, and the admission of guilt from Muawiyah, and the delegitimization of any Islamic quality of Muawiyah, he was able to expose the Munafiqeen from his army. How? Because when Imam al-Mujtaba sent the first part of his army, he broke his army contingency at 50,000. He broke his army into different contingencies. The first contingency, he sent 4,000 men under somebody from Bani Kinda, sent them to meet the army of Muawiyah, where? Present-day Ambar. Present-day Ambar. 4,000 men, led by the companions of Imam al-Hasan from the tribe of Kinda. He meets with Muawiyah. Muawiyah calls him in the middle of the night for a talk. Muawiyah is able to bribe this commander from the army of Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba with 500,000 dirham. 500,000 dirhams. The man, together with a couple of hundred of his elite warriors and companions, generals of the army, overnight defected to the camp of Muawiyah. 500,000 dirham was massive buying power at that time. Count a dirham, purchasing power of a dirham at that time to be one sheep. One sheep. If you calculate today's value, sheep, if you take in East Africa, one sheep is how much? About 20 USD? You do 20 USD times $500,000. How much it comes to in today's value? $10 million. Assume today in your day and age, $10 million. What a person can do with $10 million. Today, we see people give up their deen. They give up their love for Ahlul Bayt. They give up their azadari for Ahlul Bayt for less than $10 million. Scary times. But Imam Hasan and Mujtaba exposed these people. And if he didn't do the sulh, history would never have known about people like these. 3 times. History has recorded perhaps more. What I was able to come across in a very, very, very limited research was 3 people, 3 generals from the army of Imam al-Mujtaba who defected due to the promises given to them by Muawiyah. 10 million USD. Person said, Fi amanillah, ya Imam, ma Imam. Dunya is set. These are lessons we need to take. This is what Imam al-Mujtaba exposed. This entire group of people from the Munafiqeen and the people for Maslihah who were under the Raya flag of Imam al-Mujtaba and flag of Ahlul Bayt, Imam al-Hasan distinguished and separated them from the clean Shia. Because you know the painful thing is that you had people like Ibrahim, the son of Malik al-Ashtar, who was standing shoulder to shoulder with people like these. Imam Hasan and Mujtaba had to differentiate between the pure and the impure, because this differentiation would now set the foundation for the pure of the purest who will go to Karbala with Imam al-Hussein. Otherwise, do you know what would have happened? These same people who were under the flag of Imam Hasan would have turned around and killed their own Shia, would have killed the likes of Habib and Ibrahim and so on and so forth. Muawiyah, without having raised a sword, would have been able to ensure that the Munafiqeen and the Khawarij within the army of Imam al-Hasan destroyed the true Shias themselves. And the proof is where? When Imam Hasan signed the sulh, or Muawiyah signed the sulh imposed by Imam al-Mujtaba, a lot of the Khawarij were against the sulh because they saw if there is no war, there is no booty for war. If there is no looting in the war, if there is no gains of spoils of war, their entire dunyawi maslihah went. So when Imam al-Mujtaba signed or made Muawiyah sign the sulh, as Imam al-Mujtaba was returning back to Madain. Madain is present day 20-30 kilometers from Baghdad. And inshallah, the brothers who are going for ziyarah, inshallah, they get the tawfiq to perform the ziyarah of Salman al-Muhammadi, who is buried in Madain. Madain at that time was a city of its own. And the ruler, the wali of Madain was actually Salman al-Muhammadi. He was made the governor of Madain during the time of Umar ibn Khattab. Now a person asks, how could Salman al-Muhammadi accept to be a governor under the so-called Khilafah of Umar? It is Amir al-Mu'mineen who gave Salman permission and authority to go to Madain and act as a governor and lead as per the true principles of Islam, lest that people do not leave the religion when they look at the actions of so-called khulafa such as those. He came to equal the balance and make sure that that confidence in the deen is not lost. And he set up this base of tashayyu from Mada'in. So as Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba was returning after the Sulh was signed, he passed through Mada'in. And it was in Mada'in that the Khawarij and the Munafiqeen within the own army of Imam al-Mujtaba ambushed the carriage of Imam al-Mujtaba and they stabbed him with a dagger in the thigh. They say the stab of the dagger was so deep that the wound was so deep that the bone in the thigh of Imam al-Mujtaba was visible. Today I was reading an Islam. It is important for us to read these things. You look at the thigh bone. It's supposed to be one of the strongest bones in the body. Majority of the time, this bone can only be fractured through motor vehicle accidents. And if you look at the thickness of the skin and the depth between the outer surface of the thigh and the bone in the muscle of the thigh, understand that when the riwayah says they stabbed Imam al-Mujtaba with a khanjar is a dagger. If you were to look at the distance between the outer flesh and the bone, know that the blade of that entire dagger penetrated the thigh of Imam al-Mujtaba. These were people within his own army. For if Imam al-Mujtaba would have pressed for war, his own Shias would have been killed by the Munafiqeen that were under the flag. And they had to be exposed. They were exposed through the Sunnah. And there is much to say. The gains that Imam al-Mujtaba made through the Sulh, each one of these bunud, they call them the bunud, yani the conditions that were stipulated within this ceasefire, they deserve to be studied, they deserve to be understood, they deserve to be taught to ourselves, our communities, our children, and to the wider Islamic Ummah. And beyond the wider Islamic Ummah, non-Muslims as such gains in political science have never been made in human history by anybody. And the books of the history is there as well. Sallu ala Muhammad wa
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم.
أحبائي، استشهاد الإمام الحسن. The Masa'ib of Imam al-Mujtaba. See, from the beginning of Muharram, our tears have been for Imam al-Hussein. Today you have this night where the tears that are shed for Imam al-Hussein are mixed with the tears of Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba. And both Imam Hasan and Imam al-Hussein, Sayyidi Shabab Ahl al-Jannah, from one nur they were created. And today your tears are shed for the second half of this nur. How is it for the Za'ir and the Shia when he weeps over Imam al-Hussein? He is able to go to the haram and the dhari of Imam al-Hussein. And he's able to sit by the grave and the dhari and give condolences. Allah, Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba Badlu, on his shahada. Is there anyone who can go to Jannatul Baqi? Aslan leave going to Jannatul Baqi. Tonight as we sit here, the grave of Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba left open, not a covering over the grave. Not any sign of respect. They give condolences. Ya Maulana, Ya Sahib al-Amr. At least when you go to Karbala to mourn for Imam al-Hussein, you see people surrounding your grandfather, Abu Abdullah. You see grand people surrounding your grandfather, Amir al-Mu'minin. But over here, your grandfather, Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba, in the darkness of the skies of Medina. Not a single person to weep for him, not a single light, not a single candle on his grave. Imam al-Mujtaba, Gharib al-Ghuraba wa Imam. The narrations mention that upon the Sulh of Muawiyah, the influence of Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba grew in the land of Hijaz and beyond. Muawiyah was not able to withstand the presence of Imam al-Mujtaba, so he attempted to poison Imam al-Hasan. Ya Shi'at Imam al-Hasan, do you know that Imam al-Mujtaba was poisoned 6 times in his life? 5 times he suffered the effects of the poison, but he survived. The 6th time, the historians narrate that the poison was brought by Muawiyah and specially ordered by the king of Rome. They say that the poison that was brought from Rome, it was carried very delicately and gently in a tube, because this was a type of poison that even in Rome the king had not administered it on his enemies. They said to Muawiyah, this poison is a liquid so lethal, when you bring it from Rome to Sham and from Sham to wherever you want to use this, be careful in the way you handle this tube, because if a drop of this poison was to fall on the earth, that earth would become barren for years to come. If the poison could make a land barren, you can only begin to imagine what it did to the body of Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba. The narrations mention that Imam al-Mujtaba, from the time that he was poisoned on the 7th time, the poison that killed him, for 40 days, Imam al-Mujtaba suffered from the pangs of this poison. This poison which he passed away from and became of Shaheed on a night like this, 40 nights before he was given the poison. The narrations mention that he was in a state of Sawm in the city of Medina. It was the time of the summer. Imam al-Mujtaba came home after having completed the Sawm, reciting Salatul Maghrib and the Isha. His wife, by the name of Ju'da al-La'ina, who was the daughter of Ash'at ibn Qais. Ash'at ibn Qais, who had a hand in the martyrdom of Amir al-Mu'minin, was her father, and on the other side, her brother was Mohamed ibn Ash'ath al-Qais, who had a role in the shahadat of Muslim bin Aqil and had a role in the shahada of Sayyid al-Shuhada. Family la'ina, truly. Ju'da was convinced by Muawiyah and was bribed by Muawiyah with 100,000 dirhams to administer the poison in his yogurt. Imam al-Mujtaba, in a state of Sawm, completed his Salatul Maghribain. It was the summer and the heat had taken its toll on Imam al-Mujtaba. She put the poisoned yogurt in front of him. The narrations mention that as soon as the Imam took a sip of the poisoned yogurt, the Imam was able to feel the heat of the poison inside his body. He put down the yogurt. Ju'da said to him, will you not drink more? Will you not drink more from the poison? Imam al-Mujtaba looked at her and said to her, Katalakillah ya aduwat Allah, O enemy of Allah, may Allah kill you for the manner in which you have killed me. The sip that I have taken is enough to take my life away. Allah, Allah. For 40 nights, Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba remained inside the house, suffering from the pangs of the poison. The health of Imam al-Mujtaba and the strength of Imam al-Mujtaba's body began to deteriorate on a rapid pace on a daily basis. One of the Rawis mentioned that the intensity of the poison was such that the complexion of Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba in the beginning days of the poison, his complexion was pale. If you refer back to the people of medicine, they say the complexion is pale because the circulation of blood in the body has become weak. And then they mentioned that the complexion of Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba towards the end of his life turned green due to the intensity of the poison. Allah. Until the final days of his life, the poison is such, the narrations mention that Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba would say that the heat of the poison is such that I feel that my intestines, my insides are being cut by knives and have been lit on fire. Wa Imam. On this moment, the intensity of the poison kept building until Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba began to cough out blood. He was coughing blood through the mouth, and at other times he was bleeding. Blood was coming out from the nose of Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba. The narrations mention that the intensity of the poison was such that the insides of Imam al-Mujtaba began to disintegrate. So he began to vomit out pieces of his inside into a tasht. Allah. And one of the days, Imam al-Hussein was sitting by his brother, Imam al-Mujtaba. He was wiping the head of his brother, Imam al-Mujtaba, with a cloth. He was wiping the sweat on the forehead of Imam al-Mujtaba. Suddenly, Imam al-Mujtaba began to cough out blood. Imam al-Hussein brings out the tasht. Imam al-Mujtaba, as he was coughing out the blood, the intensity of the poison was such, he began to vomit pieces of his inside into a tasht. Imam al-Mujtaba Imam al-Hussein began to weep and cry. At that moment, Imam al-Hasan, wiping the blood from his mouth, looked at Imam al-Hussein and said to him, La yawka yawmika ya Aba Abdullah. There is no day like your day, oh my brother Abba Abdullah. It says 30,000 people shall encircle you and they shall behead you, Ya Abba Abdullah. Not only that, they shall take your women as prisoners and your severed head will be circumambulated around the different towns and cities in this world. Allah. Imam al-Hussein is consoling Imam al-Mujtaba. Imam al-Mujtaba is consoling Imam al-Hussein. In this manner, while they were in this state, they heard the voice of Sayyida Zainab al-Kubra coming to visit her brother Abba Muhammad. Imam al-Mujtaba says, oh my brother Abba Abdullah, take the tasht and hide it away from the room. Imam al-Hussein says, oh my brother, I feel that you still may need the tasht as you may cough blood into it. Imam al-Mujtaba says, oh Abba Abdullah, hide the tasht because Zainab is coming into the room. I fear that the heart of Zainab, I fear for the heart of Zainab. You know, Sayyida Zainab al-Kubra, she had a very soft heart. She had a very delicate heart. This is why when Amir al-Mu'minin was struck on the head, he was not able to walk. But when he came towards the home, he said to his sons, Imam Hasan and Mohamed bin Hanafiya, let me walk. They said, why? He says, Zainab, she will not be able to see her father. In the same way, Imam al-Mujtaba, he says, Ya Abba Abdullah, Zainab's heart is soft. She will not be able to see pieces of my insides on the tasht. Hide it and protect Zainab. I say, Ya Imam al-Mujtaba, Karbala. This is Zainab that you're protecting attached with blood in your insides. This Zainab is going to see the body of Abba Abdullah being trampled by horses. Allah, this soft heart trying to see Shimon sitting on the chest. Ya Imam al-Mujtaba, Ya Imam al-Mujtaba, this delicate heart of Zainab is going to bury Ruqayya in a prison, and she will put sand on the grave of Ruqayya and Sayyida Zainab al-Kubra comes in and she sees Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba in this state. The days are coming closer to the days of Shahada. Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba calls his entire family together, all the Bani Hashim between them. He starts to give each and every one of them his wasiyah, and then he makes the entire family in charge under the guardianship of Imam al-Hussein. He then says to Imam al-Hussein, these are my wives and these are my children. Allah, Allah, my children shall become yatim after me. My brother Abba Abdullah, you are in charge of them. At that time, the narrations mention Shah Qasim was only 3 years of old, sitting on the chest of his father, weeping and crying, which is why Imam al-Hussein, whenever Shah Qasim asked for permission in Karbala, he said, you are the yatim of my brother Hasan. And it is as if when Shah Qasim asked for permission, Imam al-Hussein would remember the wasiyah of his brother, you are in charge of the children. Imam al-Hasan gives the wasiyah and makes Imam al-Hussein in charge of the family. And then he takes Imam al-Hussein on the side and he gives him the wasiyah khasa. As he gives him the wasiyah khasa, he says to him, I now appoint you as the Imam of the Ummah after me. And the affairs of the mu'mineen are in your hands, Ya Aba Abdullah. Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba gave Sayyid al-Shuhada the Ism al-A'zam. He then gave him the books, the Mus'haf Fatima. He gave him the Quran of Amir al-Mu'mineen. And then he gave him the Dhul-Fiqar. And then he gave his brother the Aqiq ring of his father, the ring that he had given out, and the verse of Wilayah. Allah, Allah. I don't know if it is the same ring or a different ring, but Imam al-Hussein wore this ring until the day of Ashura. Ya Shiat al-Muhammad, do you know what happened to that ring? When the body of Imam al-Hussein was laying on the plains of Karbala at the time of Asr, they came and they looted the body of Imam al-Hussein. Somebody stole the amama, somebody stole the slippers, somebody stole the kaba of Imam al-Hussein. An enemy by the name of Majdar says, by the time I reached the body of Abba Abdullah, I saw everything was stolen. The belt was taken, the hat was taken, yani the cap, the amama, everything was taken. He said, I felt bad. He said, I felt bad. I missed out on stealing from the body of Hussein. He says, I was going to walk away. But when I was walking away, I said, let me look one more time. Maybe I find something. He says, I looked a little bit closer on the body of Abba Abdullah. He said, I found the ring on the finger. He says, I tried to remove the ring. I saw the ring. I liked it. I said, at least I found something to steal. He says, I tried to remove the ring from the finger of Imam al-Hussein, but the ring wouldn't come out. He says, I tried to pull. It wouldn't come out. He says, the ring wouldn't come out, but I wanted it so badly. What did I do? But the light said, I got on the side. I began to cut the finger of Abba Abdullah.
Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba gives the Aqiq of Amir al-Mu'minin to Imam al-Hussein. He appoints him as the Imam of the Ummah, and then he looks at his family for one last final time. Allah, he calls his son Qasim, and he calls the mother Ramla. Imam al-Mujtaba writes a letter for Ramla, and he says, this letter is for my son Qasim after my death. When Abba Abdullah is in Karbala, make sure you give this letter to Qasim, for indeed Qasim is my representative on the day of Ashura. The Imam then says to Abba Abdullah al-Hussein, Imam al-Mujtaba says to Imam al-Hussein, will you hold my hand until my breath, final breath of my body? The narrations mention that Imam al-Hussein held the hand of Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba. Allah, Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba taking his final breath. He is lying down on the floor. The sweat of death begins to drip down the forehead of Imam al-Mujtaba. Imam al-Mujtaba closes his eyes. He straightens his hand. He straightens his leg. And then he gently squeezed the hand of Abdullah as if to call Imam al-Hussein down. Imam al-Hussein put his ear next to the mouth of Imam al-Mujtaba. Imam al-Mujtaba says to him, oh my brother Abu Abdullah, here is Malakul Maut. He is coming with my grandfather Rasulullah. Here is my father Ali. Here is my mother Fatima. Allah. Our teachers in the house I used to say, when Sayyidah Fatima al-Zahra came to receive Imam al-Hasan, she came with one hand on her rib. Allah. It says they have come to take me. And with this, Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba took one final breath. The ruh of Imam al-Mujtaba left his body. Wa Imama Rahimallahu man nada wa Imama wa Shahida. Allah, Sayyida Zainab al-Kubra, Sayyida Kulthum, all of them begin the adha inside of the house. Allah. Imam al-Hussein begins to give the ghusl to Imam al-Mujtaba. The narrations mention that Abdullah ibn Ja'far was passing the water of the ghusl together with Maulana Abul Fadl al-Abbas and Mohamed ibn Hanafiya. They were bringing the water in, and Imam al-Hussein was giving ghusl to the body of his brother Imam al-Mujtaba. He then wrapped Imam al-Hasan inside of a coffin, and then he used the hunut that was brought by Jibreel from Jannah. They covered the body with the hunut, the coffin, and the ghusl was given. The janazah was laid down inside of the house. Imam al-Hussein called out to his sisters, Ya Zainab, Ya Kulthum, give your final farewell to your brother Imam al-Mujtaba. The janazah in the middle of the room, Sayyida Zainab is weeping, Sayyida Kulthum is weeping. But as they were weeping, Allah, Ya Zainab, as they were weeping, the wives of Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba came out, and the little children of Imam al-Hasan came out. Over here, Zainab said, my responsibility, I have to cry for my brother, but I will give sabr to the wives of Imam al-Mujtaba. I will give sabr to the children of Imam al-Mujtaba. In this way, the azah of Bani Hashim, the men then recited. Imam al-Hussein led the Salatul Janazah. Imam al-Hussein led the Salatul Janazah over his brother Imam al-Mujtaba. He then commanded the Bani Hashim to lift up the Janazah. Imam al-Hasan's testimony in his will, that is, I should be buried by my grandfather Rasulullah in Masjidun Nabawi. And then he said to him, oh my brother Abba Abdullah, the animosity of this ummah is such that if they refuse you to bury me by my grandfather Father, my will and my wish is that no blood should be shed. Rather take my janazah to Jannatul Baqi and bury me there by my mother. Allah, Allah. That Bani Hashim lifted up the janazah of Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba. Imam al-Hussein is walking by the janazah. Bani Hashim come out to bury Imam al-Hasan in Masjid al-Nabawi. Over here it is mentioned that Marwan ibn Hakam plotted with Aisha. He said to her that if Hasan ibn Ali is to be buried in Masjid al-Nabawi next to Rasulullah, I promise you that there shall be no more respect for your father or the one who ruled after him, because all the attention will go to Hasan ibn Ali, which is why she came out riding on a mule and she confronted the janazah, as on one side the janazah of Imam al-Mujtaba is going towards Masjid al-Nabawi. Aisha riding on a mule together with the Bani Umayyah intercepted and they stopped the janazah. She shouted out from on top of the mule, Allah, Allah, ya Bani Hashim, la tadfunu fi bayti man la uhib. She cried out, she said, oh Bani Hashim, I beg you do not bury the person I do not love inside of my house, for I shall not agree to that. And then Mohamed bin Hanafiya got upset. So he came to the front of the janazah and he said to Aisha, was it not sufficient you came out to us one day on a camel, and today you come out to us on a mule, and you want to refuse the burial of my brother Hasan al-Mujtaba? Until when will this animosity continue? The narrations mention that an argument and a heated argument ensued, and from over there the La'ina gave an ishara to Marwan ibn Hakam. Upon that signal from the Bani Umayyah, Allah, Allah, ya Shia Ta'ala Muhammad, 70 arrows were shot at the janazah of Imam al-Mujtaba. 70 arrows landed on the corpse of Imam al-Hasan. When this happened, when this happened, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas was at the back of the janazah with his brother Sayyid al-Shuhada. Abu al-Fadl removed his sword from the sheath and he cried out, Ya Bani Hashim, is that janazah of my brother attacked while I am over here? Abu al-Fadl had his sword in his hand. The rage was running through his body. How can the body of my brother be desecrated while Abu al-Fadl is here? And wallah, if Abu al-Fadl had run his sword on that day, he would have eradicated the entire Bani Umayyah. In this anger, in this anguish, the narrations mention Imam al-Hussein went and he caught Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. Do you know, Allah, Allah, ya Shias, this will break your heart. Do you know, this is Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. This is Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. For this to be done to Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba, Abbas cannot agree. How did Imam al-Hussein calm down Abu al-Fadl? Look at what the narration says. Imam al-Hussein went up to Abu al-Fadl. فَضَمَّهُ عَلَى صَدْرِهِ. Abu Abdullah went and he hugged Imam al-Fadl. Imam al-Hussein hugged Abu al-Fadl. فَضَمَّهُ عَلَى صَدْرِهِ. He hugged him, he pressed him close to his chest, my brother Abbas. And then وَكَمَّلَهُ بَيْنَ عَيْنَيْهِ. Imam al-Hussein kissed Abu al-Fadl on the forehead and he said to him, brother Abbas, today is not your day, there is a day for you. Allah, Allah, Abu al-Fadl, under the command of the Imam of his time, put his sword down and he says, Master, they cannot do this to my brother. The narrations mention the janazah is taken back towards Jannatul Baqi. Imam al-Hussein, Sayyid al-Shuhada, with his own hand starts removing the arrows one by one from the body of Imam al-Mujtaba, which is why the poet says, on that day, Imam al-Hussein died died 70 deaths with every arrow that he removed. Allah, Allah, ya Shia, don't hold back on your tears for Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba. The narrations mentioned with the Bani Hashim, they began to dig the grave in Jannatul Baqi. Abul Fadl al-Abbas was digging the grave of Imam al-Hasan, and he was crying while digging the grave. If only I had the permission. Allah, Allah. The narrations mention that Imam al-Hussein lowered Imam al-Hasan al-Mujtaba into the grave. He lowered him into the grave. He kissed him on the forehead. The Bani Hashim began to cover the grave of Imam Hasan al-Mujtaba. The Maktal mentions that when the grave of Imam al-Hasan was buried, Imam al-Hussein took off his ababa and he put his head on the grave of Imam al-Mujtaba and he said to him, "Oh my brother Abu Muhammad, my grief for you shall be eternal." Allah, Allah. Ya Shiat Ali Muhammad. Over here is the last part of my Masa'ib, but the manner in which Imam al-Hussein buried Imam al-Hasan and the manner in which Imam Sajjad buried Imam al-Hussein. Allah, Allah. Do you know, it is mentioned in our religion that when you are burying somebody and you lower them into the grave, then lie them on the right hand side. And when you lie them on the right hand side, make a pillow of sand for the head. So Imam al-Hussein lay Imam al-Hasan on the side. But wa Imama, Maghlumiyat of Sayyid al-Sajjad, when he was burying Imam al-Hussein, where was the head to be placed on the right? Matame Hasan, Matame Hussein.
Hasan Mumka Ata Janaza Pito Sele Ata Janaza Jodae Mal'una ne Zehre hala hal diya Zehar se mara gaya Ata janaza Marwan mal'un ne तीरों की बारिश जो की तीरों से छेदा गया आता जनाजा फौजे मलक साथ हैं सर खोले जिब्रील हैं शोर यही है बपा आता جنازہ فاطمہ فردوس سے نکلی ہے سر پیٹتی کہتی ہوئی اہل عزا آتا جنازہ یا حسن ہے حسن یا حسن ہے حسن یا ہے حسن یا حسن ہے حسن یا 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 حسن
سوس رہے گا بینانو تیری قبر بنا کے چاندیاں افسوس رہے گا بینانو تیری قبر بنا کے جان دیا افسوس رہے گا بینانو تیری قبر بنا کے جان دیا افسوس رہے گا بینانو تیری قبر بنا کے جان دیا افسوس رہے گا بینانو تیری قبر بنا کے جان دیا افسوس رہے گا بینانو تیری قبر بنا کے جان دیا افسوس رہے گا بینانو تیری قبر بنا کے جان دیا افسوس رہے گا بینانو تیری قبر بنا کے جان دیا افسوس رہے گا بینانو تیری قبر بنا کے جان دیا خطرہ دے تیری رول دی لاش ویرنا تینو کفن پا کے جان دیا افسوس رہے گا بینانو تیری قبر بنا کے جان دیا افسوس رہے گا بینانو تیری قبر بنا کے جان دیا افسوس رہے گا بینانو تیری قبر بنا کے جان دیا خطرہ دے ہے کہ تیری رول دی لاش ویرنا تیری کفن پوا کے جان دیا افسوس رہے گا بینانو تیری قبر بنا کے جان دیا افسوس رہے گا تیری قبر بنا کے جان دیا افسوس رہے گا بینانو Tiyare tachola shenu nachaya veera hasrat mein reh gayi Karbal ko saadi veerna tere zakham luka ke jaan diya afsos rahega bainanu تیری قبر بنا کے جان دیا افسوس رہے گا بہنانو تیری قبر بنا کے جان دیا افسوس رہے گا بہنانو تیری قبر بنا کے جان دیا افسوس رہے گا بہنانو تیری قبر بنا کے جان دیا وچ جولی دے تیرے سینو نہ پایا ویرا ہتھیارے نہ چایا ویرا حسرت رہ گئی ہے کربل کو سادی ویرنا تیری زخم لکا کے جان دیا افسوس رہے گا بہنانو تیری قبر بنا کے جان دیا افسوس رہے گا بہنانو تیری قبر بنا کے جان دیا افسوس رہے گا بہنانو تیری قبر بنا کے جان دیا فترہ دیکھ تیری رل دی نالاش ویرنا تینو کفن پوا کے جان دیا افسوس رہے گا بہنانو تیری قبر بنا کے جان دیا افسوس رہے گا بہنانو تیری قبر بنا کے مان غازی دیا بہنا دے گئے موقع سارے انہیں تو کے بروں کا سمجھے اترنے والے ٹوٹ دینا لوگ آگے پرگے بھی ساری ویرنا راشا کے باکے جان دیا افسوس رہے گا بہنانو تیری قبر بنا کے جان دیا افسوس رہے گا بہنانو تیری قبر بنا کے جان دیا افسوس رہے گا بہنانو تیری قبر بنا کے جان دیا افسوس رہے گا بہنانو تیری قبر بنا کے جان دیا وینے اقیا بچ رہ گئی نے باب جایا دے خط رسیا بچ گئی نے پار جایا دے دور چلیا شام دے بل دلو کریا چد گئے ویرنا ایسی چہل میں کے جان دیا افسوس رہے گا بہنانو تیری قبر بنا کے جان دیا افسوس رہے گا بہنانو تیری قبر بنا کے جان دیا افسوس رہے گا بہنانو تیری قبر بنا کے جان دیا افسوس رہے گا بہنانو تیری قبر بنا کے جان دیا مان غازی دیا بہنا دے گئے موقع سارے تین تو کے بھروں کا سمجھے اترنے والے ٹوٹ دینا لوگ آکے پور کے ساری ویرنا لاشات پا کے جان دیا افسوس رہے گا بہنانو
افسوس رہے گا بے نانو تیری قبر بنا کے جان دیا افسوس رہے گا بے نانو تیری قبر بنا کے جان دیا افسوس رہے گا بے نانو تیری قبر بنا کے جان دیا
مجھے آپ کے قاتل نے مارا بابا جب 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 مجھے آپ کے قاتل نے مارا